Welcome back. Breathe for a second. Settle your mind. Because what I'm about to say is going to flip everything you thought you knew about the last few years of your life. That silent stretch you thought would never break? Yeah, it finally shattered. The truth finally surfaced. And it isn't pretty. It's heavy, it's messy, and it's more revealing than you ever imagined. Someone finally snapped under the pressure of the secrets they were carrying. Someone from that group, that familiar circle you trusted. The ones who claimed they had your back and smiled in your face. They finally spilled everything, every hidden conversation, every fake expression, every lie that was whispered when you weren't there. Everything they thought they buried forever is now lying out in the open like poison spilled across the floor. And now you get to see how deep it went. They really believed their little secret world would last. They thought the late-night talks, the coded group chats, the private jokes, and the fake inside circle was sealed shut. They were convinced they were smarter than you. Convinced they were too careful to ever get caught. They bonded over deception like it was a hobby. But here's what people like that never understand. When you build your power on lies, eventually the rot eats through the foundation. Eventually someone's conscience crumbles, and that's exactly what happened. One of them couldn't take it anymore, couldn't sleep, couldn't sit with themselves. Their own participation became unbearable, and they cracked. They told everything, in detail. Well, enough to make you question every year you spent believing those people were genuinely in your corner. But this didn't start with casual rumors. It started in rooms you were never invited into. Rooms where your name wasn't spoken with care. It was dissected, studied, treated like a problem that needed to be shaped, sculpted, and controlled. They didn't chat about you like normal people. They analyzed you like you were a case file. Your personality became a project. Every little habit, every post, every reaction. Your tone, your patterns, your silence, your emotions. They studied it all like scientists who forgot the person behind the data. They weren't concerned about your well-being. They were busy designing a version of you that would benefit their story. And the person who finally confessed described how rehearsed it was. Someone would always start with fake worry. I'm concerned about them, or they seem weird lately. But those lines were just bait. Scripted openings to make you look unbalanced, emotional, unpredictable, too much. They even practiced responses to things you hadn't even said yet. They created counter-stories for events that hadn't happened. They built a fake identity for you and spread that version as if it were the truth. And all while doing this, they smiled in your face. They texted you back like nothing was wrong. They laughed at your jokes. They stood beside you. They acted normal because they practiced acting normal. The confessors said they would literally remind each other, don't slip, act regular before seeing you. They became trained performers, professional leers, hiding the knife behind the friendly voice, and then it got even colder. Because it didn't stay as secret talk, it turned into a plan. They had roles, they had assignments, they had phrases to repeat so everyone around you heard the same distorted version of your life. One person pretended to be the worried friend. One collected screenshots to support their storyline. One checked on you just to gather new information to take back to the group. And one spread the story far enough that people who barely knew you started forming opinions about you based on lies. Benyon, and the worst part, the confessors said they were the one who stayed closest, the one you cried to, the one who hugged you when you fell apart, the one who sat with you when you were hurting. And the entire time, they were feeding your pain back to the group as evidence. They twisted your vulnerability into ammunition. That was the role they signed up for, and they finally couldn't live with it anymore. They admitted it eventually became frighteningly normal for them. The group made the betrayal feel righteous, like hurting you was somehow protecting you, as if manipulation was a form of care. They shared screenshots, hundreds, of conversations where your name showed up again and again next to jokes, insults, sneers, and mean little comments. They mocked your challenges. They laughed when people drifted away from you. They treated your real life like a TV show they were watching, for fun, as if your human experience was just entertainment. And the part that chills the soul is this: they had a whole method behind how they tried to trigger you. They created a blueprint for provoking reactions. Sometimes people around you behave in ways that leave you feeling confused or misunderstood. They may say or do little things that feel unsettling, and when you react normally, they act surprised. Plans might shift at the last moment, small comments might feel unclear, and you may find yourself wondering if you misread something. And when other people look in from the outside, it can even appear like you're the one being overly sensitive, even though you know you're simply responding like any human would. Through all of this, you were just living your life with sincerity, trusting, assuming good intentions, trying to show up honestly. You didn't realize that tiny things that felt off to you were actually patterns. Moments that gave you a strange feeling were not random. They added up. Now, as clarity comes in, certain conversations make more sense. You can finally see that your uneasy feelings were valid. You could have been celebrating something joyful, and someone might have misinterpreted it. You could have stayed quiet, and it might have been read incorrectly. You could have expressed emotion, and someone might have taken it in a way you didn't intend. The truth is, sometimes people do not see us accurately, no matter how genuine we are. Sometimes people talk about us in ways that don't match who we really are. And sometimes groups form opinions without ever checking in with our actual heart. Occasionally, people try to interpret your reactions like they're analyzing data. They might reflect on your words or expressions later in ways you never expected. It can feel like your natural personality is being filtered through someone else's perspective before it reaches the room. If you ever notice friends slowly becoming distant, it doesn't always mean you did something wrong. Sometimes other interpretations, assumptions, or misunderstandings float around quietly, and they influence perception without you knowing. Often it starts with subtle, concerned tones, gentle comments, or vague statements that plant a question in someone's mind, and then that question grows over time. Some people study communication topics online, things like emotional patterns, defense mechanisms, projection dynamics, and so on. Not always with harmful intent, but because they are curious or trying to understand human behavior. And sometimes those concepts get applied in situations where they don't actually fit. That mismatch can create confusion and self-doubt, and yet, here you are, gaining clarity. Truth reveals itself without you having to force it. You don't need to argue your worth. You don't need to justify your reactions. You don't need to prove your sincerity. Your calm presence is enough. Every day you show up as yourself. You reclaim the space inside you that was always real, and that gentle peace within you speaks louder than any misunderstanding ever could. They spent years trying to destroy you, and in the end, all they ended up destroying was themselves. They wasted their time trying to break someone who never belonged to their tiny, suffocating world in the first place. While they sat in closed circles obsessing over your downfall, you were growing in silence. While they plotted your collapse, you were creating a future they couldn't touch. While they fueled each other with lies, you were feeding your soul with lessons, self-work, and quiet evolution. And that is what frightened them the most, not your actions, but your existence. You are living proof that real authenticity survives even the dirtiest sabotage attempts. You are the reminder that truth doesn't die in darkness. It just waits for the right moment to shine. You became a mirror that forced them to see the empty space inside themselves. You didn't just survive their manipulation, you grew beyond it. And now, with everything exposed in plain light, you can walk forward knowing with absolute certainty that they never broke you. They never even came close, because even in the middle of rumors, betrayals, and twisted stories, you still stood up. You still lived. You still smiled, you still created. They never understood the kind of strength that doesn't shout, but endures. The kind that doesn't seek revenge, but simply outlasts every lie spoken against it. Lance, they believed pain would crush you. Instead, pain carved you sharper. They believed isolation would silence you. Instead, isolation made your vision clearer. You stepped into a version of yourself they could never duplicate. The false character they invented was fragile. The real you became unbreakable, calm, steady, rooted in quiet truth, glowing from the inside like someone who no longer needs to explain anything to anyone. And now that the dust is settling, everything looks different. The same people who laughed about you in private can't look you in the eyes now. The same group that acted like they were protecting others from you is now scrambling to protect themselves. They are whispering apologies wrapped in excuses, trying to rewrite their cruelty as confusion, as misunderstanding. But you see it clearly now. You see how easily they crumble when the story no longer props them up. You see how their loyalty to each other vanishes when accountability arrives. Their alliances, the ones they built on your destruction, are falling apart one by one because everyone is trying to save themselves. It is strange how poetic it is. The empire of lies they crafted is dissolving because of the same instability they once accused you of having. Bond, but don't confuse this falling apart as your revenge. This isn't about payback. This is about restoration. The confession didn't surface to make you angry. It surfaced to confirm your inner knowing. Every moment you doubted yourself, every second you second-guessed your instincts because people made you feel dramatic, all of that finally makes sense. The fog is gone. The missing pieces are finally in your hands. Your pain wasn't imaginary. It was manufactured. And now that you have the clarity, you also have release. Release from defending yourself. Release from explaining your character. Release from dragging ghosts with you. Healing isn't pretending the damage never happened. It's reclaiming the you that existed before their poison touched you. And then going even further. You are no longer the person you were before the betrayal. But you are also no longer defined by the betrayal itself. You've stepped beyond all of that, because what survived wasn't just your body moving through time. It was your soul, your integrity, your compassion, your empathy, your inner light. Those things couldn't be twisted, couldn't be killed off, couldn't be owned by anyone else. They endured, they adjusted, they transformed. You are living evidence that no matter how carefully they coordinated the lies, no matter how long the betrayal lasted, no matter how dark the season felt, truth eventually finds the person it belongs to. And now it has arrived, through your clarity, through your perspective, through your awakening. So lift your head, breathe slow, and step forward with quiet strength. The storm has already passed. You are still here, untouched at your core. They never shattered you. All they did was reveal how impossible you were to break in the first place. Welcome back. The world has space for your voice again. The story they tried to rewrite, it's yours again now. They always knew what they were doing. And that is what makes it so unsettling. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't innocent confusion. This was intentional harm disguised as concern. And the question that always follows situations like this is simple. Why? Why would anyone pour so much time, energy, and cruelty into tearing someone down? The confessor said it began with envy. Not a small spark, but a deep, corrosive jealousy that gnaws from the inside. You held something they couldn't manufacture. Maybe it was your inner steadiness, maybe your honesty, maybe your ability to be real in a world obsessed with pretending. Maybe it was your independence, your refusal to beg for belonging. Whatever it was, it exposed their emptiness. Instead of working on themselves, they turned that discomfort outward. They aimed to destroy the mirror that reflected their lack. But the jealousy didn't stay isolated. It grew. It became a shared obsession, a group identity rooted in tearing you apart. Your undoing became their bonding activity.
Hey, why?
Inside jokes formed around your name. They celebrated when someone stopped talking to you. They treated every small success in isolating you like a milestone. It became entertainment, a twisted hobby. You became the glue that held their insecurity together. Bandly, and after repeating their own false version of events again and again, they actually began to believe it themselves. They rewrote memories, retold stories, convinced themselves they were heroes protecting others from you. In their minds, they weren't cruel, they were righteous. And according to the confessor, it was frightening how easily they justified their behavior. They turned your demonization into a cause. They created a culture where you were the problem and anything done to you was necessary. And any time someone questioned whether they were going too far, the group rushed to suppress doubt. Compassion was treated like betrayal. Conscience was treated like weakness. Their unity depended on keeping the lie alive. So they locked themselves tighter into their own echo chamber, unable to see how distorted they'd become. Baldy, and here is the shift. This confession doesn't just reveal them. It frees you. Those sleepless nights replaying conversations, wondering if you misread things, doubting your intuition, all of it finally makes sense. You weren't imagining patterns. You were sensing them. Your instincts were sharper than their illusions. That is why they targeted your confidence, because you were the one person who could see through them. And now the truth is out, through proof, through receipts, through details too specific to twist. And now, they are the ones panicking. The same people who once controlled the narrative are scrambling to rearrange it again, but this time to protect themselves. Suddenly they care deeply about how they look. Suddenly they fear being misrepresented. Suddenly they understand the terror of being misunderstood. Now they are calling, messaging, trying to explain before anyone sees the full picture. Now they taste the paranoia they forced on you for so long. Leaned, and the irony is enormous. The very emotions they planted in you are now growing in them. But here is your quiet victory. You don't need revenge. You don't need to confront them. You don't need to prove anything. Truth is already unraveling their empire all on its own. The same pathways they used to poison your name are now carrying the exposure of their actions. The downfall is happening without you lifting a single finger. Ben, you don't need to chase justice. The truth is already delivering it.